Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, another news and review to discuss. We're discussing a PTO that's happened from our past couple days, and some trade rumors involving the Hurricanes, Oilers, Sharks, Blues, Canadians, and a couple of other teams. So it's all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to the video here at the Intent Hockey channel. Now before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. We're able to with our video guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below and don't leave a comment down in the comment section below so we can discuss today's video. Now we'll start today's video off with some signing updates, but there hasn't been any signings since we last talked about. There has been one PTO update, and that is that the Detroit Red Wings have signed Austin Watson to a PTO. Watson last year played in Tampa, looked pretty good. It's like a bomb six forward. Before that, he was a couple of years in Ottawa, a couple of years in Nashville, so he's been around the NHL for a little bit over the past little while. Like I said, had a decent season last year in Tampa as a solid bomb six forward. Can play all right as like a solid fourth liner. Definitely can put up the physicality there, so that's a pretty good pickup there for the Red Wings. We'll have to see if he earns a contract or not, but interesting pickup there from Detroit as they've gone a solid bomb six forward in Austin Watson on a PTO, so interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors here. So there's a lot of things we want to talk about here today. I'm going to start today's video off by looking at Filip Zadina. Now, there was a report earlier in the week saying that the Buffalo Sabres were signing Filip Zadina to a PTO, but later on those claims were disputed, and it sounded like Zadina was not signing a PTO, but he was close on a new contract. And now Kevin Weeks has put out a statement there saying that Zadina is currently having interest from 3 different teams and is very likely to sign a contract in not just in future. So that's interesting to know. We just talked about how Zadina is a very likely candidate to wind up being signed. PTO is apparently maybe not what he's going to be looking for, and he might still get a new contract, so we'll have to wait and see. Zadina last year wasn't an overly great player. I think he only had like 12 goals and 22 points last year, so he wasn't overly productive on a very bad Sharks team, but I think he still has the potential of being a solid top 9 forward. So I could see why some teams might have some interest in him. If there's some teams out there who still have a hole in their top 9 and could use a guy who could potentially put up maybe 15 or 20 goals if he can find his form, I think there could be a couple of teams interested for sure. So I don't think it's too surprising that Kevin Weeks has said that 3 teams might have some major interest in a guy like Filip Zadina. So I'll have to wait and see on that, but according to Kevin Weeks, Filip Zadina is drawing interest from at least 3 teams, and he could wind up signing out just in future, even if the claim that he was going to Buffalo on PTO has been disputed. So interesting note there. Going over to a couple of interesting updates when it comes to some RFAs. We talked about Jeremy Swayman in our last video, but according to David Pagnotta, who was recently on NHL Network, he talked about a couple of other players too who are RFAs who are looking for new deals. I started with talking about Jarvis, saying that deal is getting close. LA Freeman said similar things too. It sounds like it's going to be a 7 to 8 year deal at around $7.5, maybe $8 million. So it'll be interesting to note there, somewhere between 7 and 8 it sounds like for Jarvis. So that's a little bit more expensive than I thought he was going to get, but still it's an interesting piece of work there if that's exactly what happens. And at 7 to 8 years, I think that's a pretty good pickup there for the Hurricanes. So in my opinion, that's pretty good for the Hurricanes if they're able to get Jarvis in like a 7 to 8 year deal between $7 and $8 million. And I think he should be able to work really well in like the top 6. So a pretty good pickup there for the Canes if that does wind up working out the way it sounds like it will. And then David Pagnotta also said that Dawson Mercer and Lucas Raymond, Mercer in New Jersey, Raymond in Detroit, are both not close on a contract right now. Now we talked about how Mercer, I was expecting to go between $4.5 and $5.5 million. I was expecting Raymond to go between $7.5, maybe closer to $8 million. It sounds like there's a little bit of separation between those two sides right now, Detroit and Raymond, New Jersey and Mercer. So it definitely does sound like there's a very likely chance that we'll have to wait and see if these two wind up getting done before training camp. But according to David Pagnotta, it's currently far apart right now. Hopefully they do get something done before the season starts. But interesting to note there that Mercer and Raymond are not close on extensions with the Devils and the Red Wings. My guess would be Mercer's probably looking for something between $5 and $6 million, and the Devils want something closer to $4. My guess is that Steve Yzerman wants Raymond somewhere around $6.5, and Raymond wants in the 7s. So that's just my guess. There's been no rumors about that. That's what I would think is what's keeping these two sides apart right now. So it'll be interesting to see if these two sides can bridge the gap and get something done before the season starts. But interesting to note there that Mercer and Raymond, according to David Pagnotta, are not close on new deals. Well, it sounds like Jarvis' extension could happen in the next week, and it sounds like it'll be a 7 to 8 year deal between $7 and $8 million. So interesting note there. Going over to the Vancouver Canucks, I've seen this actually mentioned a couple of times, not exactly sure where it came from, but we talked about how the Vancouver Canucks are currently in the market for a goaltender in our last video with the injury to Demko, which is really bad. But I've seen another name be linked to the Canucks when it comes to goaltending upgrades, and that is Alex Lyon. Now, Lyon is a pretty good goaltender. goaltender. Last year was the backup for the Detroit Red Wings. Actually played pretty well. Was basically their goaltender going down the stretch. Sort of ran out of gas, which did lead the Red Wings to wind up missing the playoffs, but still, Lyon was a really good goaltender. He's entering the final year of his deal, under $1 million contract, so I think that the Red Wings will probably want to hold on to him, given his cap hit, given his contract, also given the fact that he was really good for them last year. But I think there's also a possibility that Vancouver might be able to prime out there. It'll probably take like a second or third round pick and maybe something else as well, but I think if the Red Wings were able to move on from Lyon and get some sort of a decent return, I think they'd be willing to do that, and I think that could be a really good addition there for the Canucks, because we've seen them before. Lyon can be a really solid backup or potentially even tandem player, so that could be a really good pickup there for the Canucks. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure if it will actually happen. It's very likely that the Red Wings hold on to Lyon and try and keep him in their tandem and try and move on from a guy like Ville Husso, like I talked about in my last video. But still, I think there's a very likely possibility that they could wind up trying to move Alex Lyon, and Lyon I think could be a really good fit with the Vancouver Canucks. So I'll have to wait and see on that, but it's been something I've been hearing over the past little while, saying that Lyon might be an option there for the Canucks. And if that is true, then I think Lyon could be a really good fit there in Vancouver, especially in the short term with Demko being injured. So interesting to note there, but I think there's a possibility we could see Lyon, but I wouldn't be overly shocked if he stayed in Detroit. Going over to the St. Louis Blues, I've seen some people recently talking about this, but after the Blues signed Filip Broberg, that's a lot of people that think that the Blues may still have to move a defenseman. Now we know that Torrey Krug's injured. Will probably miss the most of the, or if not the entire regular season this year for the St. Louis Blues, so that will help them, not only the cap situation, but also with the possibility of having too many defensemen. But still, after that, they still have too many defensemen. They have Justin Falk, Colton Parayko, Filip Broberg, Nick Leddy, Scott Perunovich, Ryan Suter, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, Matt Kessel, and Tyler Tucker. Now those are 9 defensemen on a defense that can only suit 7 or 8 defensemen, so they could risk maybe moving 1 or 2 of those guys down on waivers. It's a possibility. It's not an overly ideal possibility, but it is a possibility for sure. But the other one is potentially, could they move another one? Now, they've been rumored about moving a guy like Colin Parayko or Nick Leddy for quite some time. I think it's possible they could still try and move one of them, but with their big contracts and still being signed for the next couple of years, I think it's more likely that they wind up staying. They could look to try and maybe move on from like Tyler Tucker or Matt Kessel or Scott Perunovich is possible, but I wouldn't rule that out. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. But I've seen a lot of people say the Blues could wind up moving someone. If there's a team who really still needs a top 4 defenseman, maybe they could try and ask for St. Louis for one of Parayko or Leddy. I think it's possible. But maybe it's another possibility that they could try and maybe just move one of the younger defensemen, or maybe it's possible they move someone on waivers. But they have 9 defensemen, non-including Torrey Krug, who are on the NHL roster right now, and they're not going to be able to keep 9 defensemen on their roster, so there's a very likely chance that 1 or 2 of them will either have to be traded or moved down via waivers. And I think there's a very likely possibility that they could try and look to move a guy like Parayko or a guy like Leddy, or there's also a very likely chance that they could try and just send 1 or 2 players like a Perunovich or a Tucker down waivers. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but definitely before the season starts, it sounds like the Blues will be having to make a defensive move, whether that's moving someone down on waivers or trading someone, so we'll have to keep an eye on the St. Louis Blues. Next, going over to the Montreal Canadiens. Now for the Canadiens, they are also a team who we have to watch out for. According to a couple of recent reports, it sounds like there's a very likely possibility the Canadiens are not done moving after the Lyon trade, and they could still make 1 or 2 more moves before season starts, and one of them may be having to move off some pieces off their roster. Now, after acquiring Patrick Laine, they have a really good top 6. They have Caulfield, they have Suzuki, they have Doc, they have Laine, they have Slavkovsky. There's a couple of other really good forwards in that group, so there's a very likely chance that they already have their forward group set up, but their bottom 6 is full of a lot of players who are overpaid at this point. You have Christian Dvorak, you have Josh Anderson, Brendan Gallagher, Yoel Armia. You also have Jake Evans in the bottom 6, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, and young guys like Joshua Roy and Riley Kidney and Owen Beck may want to try and make some stab at the NHL level this year. So they have some really good bottom 6 options, but they do have a really crowded forward group. So that's a lot of people think maybe they might try and make one more move, try and move someone off the roster before the season starts. Now, I think ideally they would want to move one of Josh Anderson or Brendan Gallagher. Both have 3 years left on their deal this year plus 2 more seasons. Anderson has a $5.5 million cap hit. Gallagher has $6.5 million cap hit. So it would be expensive to move those guys, but I think ideally they would want to move one of those 2 guys. More likely option would be for them to potentially move on from Yoel Armia or Christian Dvorak. Dvorak and Armia are both entering the final year of their deals. Dvorak has a $4.45 million cap hit. Armia a $3.4 million cap hit. So they're really expensive, especially as bottom 6 forwards. Maybe in other situations, they could get bigger roles, like maybe if they were traded to a team like Anaheim or San Jose or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there, but I can definitely see Armia or Dvorak wind up being traded. I mean, they're both overpriced players, but I think Dvorak in the right situation could still be a solid second, third line center. Armia in the right situation could still be a solid third line forward. So seeing Dvorak or Armia moved wouldn't be too surprising. Like I said, Armia actually had a pretty good end of the season last year. Dvorak, I think, is still young enough to be a solid second, third line center. So in my opinion, I could see one of those two guys be moved. It does seem like the Canadians really want to move someone with a little bit more cap, or try and free up some more cap space. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there. But after the Line trade, they have a logjam in the forward group, especially with guys on bigger term contracts. And there's really like a chance that we could see one or two of those guys move before the start of the season. So I'll have to wait to see how that. And lastly, going over to the Edmonton Oilers. According to a couple of recent reports, it sounds like the Oilers might make one more big move before season starts to try and offset the losses of Broberg and of Holloway. Now, they moved off from Cody Ceci as well. They added Ty Emberson. They added Filip Zadina. Emberson's a really good player, but at this point, he's more of a sixth defenseman in the Edmonton Oilers system. So I'm not sure if he's a major upgrade on either Broberg or Ceci. On top of that, they did acquire Vasily Podkolzin to sort of help with the loss of Dylan Holloway, but it sounds like they're still most likely going to make one more trade. There's been some linkage to a team like the Nashville Predators where, according to a couple of recent reports, there's a possibility they could be looking at a guy like Dante Fabro and maybe even a guy like Philip Tomasino from Nashville. Tomasino's an unsigned RFA. Fabro's entering the final year of a $2.5 million deal, in which case he'll be a UFA at the end of the next season. So that could work out for the Oilers, especially given the fact they don't have too many right-shot defensemen. But there's a lot of speculation out there that the Oilers are in the defensive market and are looking for a right-shot defenseman. They've been linked, like I just said, to Dante Fabro. Could they pull off a big trade with Nashville? It's possible. They've also been linked to a team like Calgary with Rasmus Anderson, although I think that's more of an in-season trade for the Flames. They've been linked to a guy like David Savard from Montreal. That could be an interesting add. On the defensive end, for the Oilers, if they were trying to make a trade with the Canadians, if you look at the free agent side of things, they could look at a guy like Kevin Shattenkirk, Justin Schultz. There's some talk about Tyson Barrie coming back to Edmonton. So there's a lot of interesting options there for the Edmonton Oilers to go to if they want to try and add on the blue line. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there for the Oilers. But I definitely expect the Oilers to make some sort of a move on the blue line in the not too distant future. And it sounds like they will make one more huge move before the season starts. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. Could it be Fabro? I think it's a very likely possibility. Could it be someone else? It's another possibility. But we'll have to wait and see. So those are all the rumors that we're talking about for the past couple of days. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. Do the Oilers make a big splash? And if so, what sort of team do they try and make a trade with for the defenseman? Do the Canadians move forward? And if so, is it more Dvorak or Armia? Or is it more of a Gallagher or an Anderson? If the Blues do move a defenseman, which is it? Could be a Parayko, could be a Leddy, or is it more like a Perunovic, Tucker, or Kessel? What about the Canucks? Could they try and add Alex Lyon? And if so, what's the ask from the Detroit Red Wings? What do you think about Mercer and Raymond not being close on a contract extension with the Red Wings and the Devils? Well, what do you think about Jarvis nearing a contract extension with the Carolina Hurricanes? What do you think about Zadina potentially having interest from 3 teams? And what do you think about Austin Watson signing a PTO in Detroit? Definitely leave your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So on top for today, or like this video. If you're listening, subscribe down below. Think about support we're able to help you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. So listen to all discussed in today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. Leave it in the description below. And I can't see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.